Okay, let's get started for the November 17th F&A meeting. We'll start with approval of minutes from September and October meeting. I never did this. Any objections? Great. Samantha, can I pass it to you for Borough Manager reports?
Absolutely. Thank you, Councilman Rickards. Let me set the TV up here so that it doesn't block the screen. Believe it or not, I do not have the manager report memorized, so I'll have that open in just a second here.
You know what, while you search for that.
Oh, no, we're good.
You got it? Okay.
I have it up, just in time. All right, so first some quick updates on items from previous council meetings that we're not currently going to talk about tonight. Mainline Greenway is still a little bit TBD. Staff in Lower Marion Township, who are generally leading that project, have been committed to other tasks. I have been talking a little bit with Kimberly Bezak about how do we, kind of spur them on, but we also want to be respectful of the things they're working on as well. So we'll continue to keep tabs on that, and when there's something to report, we'll be sure to report it. As mentioned before, the borough got the county transportation grant, so we're waiting on the contract paperwork for that. As discussed before, the contractor for Haverford Ave is awaiting materials and should be getting to work on that in the spring. And then the update on the skate park that council approved. Our public works director did make contact with the donator for the skate park equipment. And I believe I think tomorrow or Friday is going up there to take a look at it and figure out how to get it over here. He wasn't involved in the previous efforts our public works foreman made to figure it out. So we're starting a little bit back from where we were, but I feel confident we'll get it figured out pretty quickly. And then he is gonna chat with Jesse Clayton, and I think also reach out to some community members about how to actually set up the equipment. There's also some signage that has been developed that's going to be shared with the Parks and Rec Committee tomorrow night to help announce the change to the tennis courts with the skate park.
Just as a side note, and this is no action of council, but just more for the public and a note of kind of an example of how we're utilizing local resources. Mike, who you originally connected us to, retired from HUD, has some contacts and developments and saying, how can we have maybe an article written? He's mentored some folks that have done pieces on kind of local fare. So I connect him actually with David Bordeaux and the NBA of saying, how could they then coordinate some regional press on the skate park and coming to the skate park and dining. So again, no action of council, but just the community kind of supporting the skate park and this new initiative. So we'll look forward to hear from those folks.
Okay. And then with just some other items that council hasn't had to make decisions on or anything like that, but LED street lights. So on Monday night, I drove around the borough with our lighting consultant and looked at some of the lights and all that. He had set up a test street on South Narberth Ave. So some sample shields and dimming was done on South Narberth Ave yesterday. Earlier tonight, our lighting consultant was looking at the test street, and after this meeting, I'll be going over there to look at the test street. And we hope then, once we see how the shielding and the dimming actually looks, to then on a case-by-case basis, based on the complaints we received, determine what solutions are appropriate for borough residents, if any. So, I also did ask him to follow up on the status of the lights that have not been installed yet, because we do still have a handful of those. And then lastly, kind of a unique opportunity that felt council should know about. The Franklin Institute is doing a Harry Potter-based exhibit, and their marketing firm has reached out to the Borough and the NBA about any opportunity to promote that. So that's largely something that's going on with the NBA because I didn't want the Borough involved in promoting a private business venture. But if anyone sees any Harry Potter stuff, around the Borough, don't be surprised. And that is the manager's report.
And just with the Harry Potter, as a side note, again, not an action of council, but exciting to think that the Franklin Institute identified Narberth as a potential really accessible, because of our training, the civic and community involvement. So for us to be in consideration, they've already sold 39,000 tickets. So I think that's just a testament to our little town. Okay, thanks. Anything for the Treasury Report?
Sure. So, the good news is we're in, this Treasurer's Report is based off of the end of October. A lot could still happen in 2 months, but, we're getting near the end of the budget year. And I'm pleased to report that the Borough is on track with a projected net income of $435,000 and change for the end of the year. So that's definitely good news for the Borough budget. And I think that's one of the main things to report. Most everything else is on track with budget. There are some things for the account codes, because I was new back in the summer, I had to make sure certain bills got assigned to the right account codes. We'll get all that cleaned up by the end of the year. But overall, the budget this year is doing pretty great.
Great, thanks. Okay, then information for discussion, comprehensive plan and review. Just for the public, to let you know that we did follow up with doing that comprehensive evaluation review. I sent that to Samantha. Maybe we can even actually put the whole document. I'll send that to you just attached to these minutes, so it's for public file. But Fred went in and ranked essentially the points that were high priority and council identified as not making progress on. The three of us then just looked through that data and said, okay, let's identify questions, considerations, what committee or office should be assigned to that. So I really think we just at this point need to go over that with council. I thought that was good. I still think that we should maybe do that annually. And Samantha, to your opinion, maybe a little bit before the budget, we could set the timing up a little bit better for next year, but just to revisit that.
I think it's a useful exercise to help determine, projects for council to work on next year. So I think as an end of year exercise, it works pretty well. It's whenever to time it, exact timing.
Just as a corollary note, since we did that activity, I was looking at the open space plan. I was thinking, gosh, why don't we do the same process? And see where we come out.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, actually.
And then think about, is it time for an update? Time to update it.
Right.
It may be that many of those things have been incorporated into the comp plan, but I think the process that you put in place for review and discussion is really effective.
Yeah, I think we should extend that because so often documents like that get put into a drawer.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's important that it remains a living document. And a lot of the stuff that we reviewed, Samantha, we did say, well, we did do this. And actually, and so many were connected, and we kind of officially, I think, assigned them to committees.
So if I may offer, in my prior employment, the planner that I worked with, he and I designed, well, we weren't the ones who came up with it, but for my prior municipality, we created what's called an implementable comprehensive plan, which kind of follows along with what you're saying you'd like to see. So it might be something to consider the next time we update the comp plan to moving into that sort of format and process.
Can I ask how you did that?
It would take a while in this meeting to explain, but I'm happy maybe outside the meeting to talk with you a little bit more about it. And then if you think it's viable, we could then talk about the whole committee in public.
Okay.
I do think this is a valuable exercise, and we should, time permitting, we should repeat it next year. And I think we'll identify different priorities because we'll have worked on some of the highest priority things.
Agreed. And I
figured out how to, I think based on our experience, we can make it a little smoother and a little faster.
And we talked about kind of doing a town hall almost kind of state of the union on that review. We did not get through it all, and I think that part of that exercise was just how complex that would take. I mean, it would really take quite a long time to do that. But I do wonder if in 2022 at this point, we do take a point to really point out this is what has been accomplished. Because we did point out things that had been accomplished that we had really not stopped to take note of. And then these are things that we're going to work on, and to map that out for the public would be really helpful.
And many things are in progress. But to Fred's
Yeah.
point about if there's time and that it could be, that it would be smoother next time, I think just even a little bit of education of council members about how to approach the data sets
Yeah.
will help give us better data. So like, because it's my first time, I didn't really know I know better now how to make it a useful review. And so, yeah.
Yeah, and Samantha actually has that PDF, so we can project that, and you can explain how you organize the data, and then we can explain how we reviewed it for full council.
Sure, I'd be happy to.
Yeah, and speaking of, so speaking of the town hall, again, me and the planner I worked with before, yeah, that was one of the first projects we worked on together. Was we did a town hall based off that sort of thing, and it was pretty well attended. I mean, there was I'd say about 160 people there, which for a small town is pretty good, and people really liked it and enjoyed it and got a lot out of it.
Yeah.
So it could be really useful for Narborough.
So traditionally, the council president, at least at my time on council, Aaron has kind of done a State of the Union town hall discussion, but perhaps council can talk about you as a borough manager doing that, or what format we'd like. Perhaps it's you as a borough manager, and then committees, Bob, you and I kind of have like committee chairs and committees there to kind of supplement. So it's not just one individual, but rather the 360 perspective.
I think it's a great conversation to have is having a town hall and how we want to structure it now.
Okay, well, let's save that for the full table. Okay, the Scantech proposal then, if we don't have anything else but comprehensive plan to discuss now. Okay.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Rickard. So, the Scantech proposal, so for people in the public who, who don't get to see the borough records, so my predecessor, I give a lot of credit to, as well as our current staff member, Michelle Carroll, went through a process of trying to start to organize the borough's historical records. The borough is required by the state of Pennsylvania to retain certain paper documents for certain periods of time and all that. My understanding is the records were not up to those standards and were generally pretty unorganized. So when I first got here this summer, because of the pandemic and the office being closed, multi-purpose room had been turned into a storage space for these documents, which number probably about 50 or 60 banker's boxes worth of material. So since we reopened the office, those documents, those boxes were relocated to a room that's not accessible to the public. However, we do still need to finish going through those records and disposing of the ones that don't have historical value that are allowed to dispose of per the state record retention schedule. Admittedly, this is a kind of a judgment call for council, of course. I think the quickest way to get that done is to bring in someone from the outside to take care of it. Borough staff could certainly do it. It's just a very time-intensive process it's not a hard process, it's just you have to go through every record, label what the record is, look it up in the record retention schedule, determine if you can throw it away, and if you can throw it away, determine if it has historical value or not. So I just see it being very time intensive, and so I thought it might be more cost effective for the borough to look at having an outside vendor do it. While there had been some discussion about maybe having volunteers or community members get involved with it, to give it further thought, unfortunately some of the records in there have people's, medical history. There are certain personnel records intermixed in with general borough records. There are documents in there that would ordinarily not be subject to right to know and that sort of thing. So I don't know how comfortable I feel with a member of the public necessarily going through them, though I do appreciate the offers to do so. So That's the reason too why I felt like a professional might be, an outside professional might be the way to go. So Michelle Carroll looked into some options for that, and she recommended to me Scantech, who I haven't directly worked with before, but I've certainly heard of, and I know plenty of other towns have used. So hence is this proposal for F&A tonight, which is currently budgeted in the 2022 budget. But of course, depending on where all you want to go with this, we can of course change the budget with council later tonight. So I'm happy to answer any questions or thoughts members have on it.
And that's 13,000, correct?
Let's see here. I believe it's
Is it
18,000.
18? Okay. Just Samantha and I talked about
16,500. Sorry.
we split the difference.
Yeah.
I mean, Samantha said that beautifully. That is so laborious. I think we need to ask, is it worth that much money to have that significant amount of time for our employees to do that? And I agree with Samantha, while the volunteerism is appreciated, there really are. I mean, I know we looked at it, there are really detailed medical records. I think it's absolutely inappropriate for volunteers to have access to that information. Thoughts?
Let's get it done.
Fred?
I mean, the job needs to be done.
It has to be done, okay. And we agree that it is not good stewardship of tax dollars to have our staff doing this when we can outsource it.
Should have been outsourced years ago to be done.
And it wouldn't have been $16,000 at this point.
I mean, my thought is that remains that library personnel are trained in archival operations and they are trained in this sort of thing. But I mean, it sounds like you've considered it and you don't think it's appropriate. So I think we can move ahead with this.
Okay, great. The next is NBA Allocation Oversight. So just as kind of a little background and context for the public as well, that last year we pivoted $12,000 from a communications stipend that went to Ed Ridgway to $12,000 to the NBA. This year in the budget, we have recommended doubling that to $25,000 with the consideration of a few things. One is post-pandemic and economic development, but largely the fact that the NBA has now absorbed the events from the 4th of July. When the 4th of July committee did retire the funds that were about $25,000, if I believe correct, were not transferred over to this year's fireworks, and they were not transferred over to support these upcoming events. So therefore, the NBA is starting with no additional funds at this time. So we discussed increasing that allocated amount to the NBA given the new responsibilities. So that's where we got that $25,000. With that new budget, though, we did discuss that there should be some earmarks and benchmarks and guidance on that relationship between the NBA and the borough, given the amount of money. So that is something that I would just like to prepare now so the NBA understands what the reporting structure would be, what the expectations for the earmarks would be. And I don't think we're asking them to account to every 15-minute billing by any means. But just some general agreement of what's expected and how that's evaluated.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's fair to require a kind of a budget, submit just a general category of how the money is spent.
Do you think that's something that we need to do in committee, or is that something, Samantha, that you feel like you could meet with the NBA?
Yeah, I feel like administratively I can handle that, because I agree. I think, anytime the borough makes any external allocation, we shouldn't be writing anyone not necessarily a blank check per se, but these are taxpayer funds and we need to be accountable to the
Some sort of
taxpayers.
accountability.
We have a model for that in our relationship with the fire department. They provide basic reporting.
We've also started getting reporting from Harvey Ambulance as well.
Sure. Yeah, so I'm happy to work with the NBA and talk about that. And I guess what I would envision is something along the lines of, these are the events that this funding has supported. These are some high-level budget items for what the money has paid for in each of these events. Like for example, 4th of July fireworks, this is about how much was spent on the fireworks, for example, or something like that. And And, and that's something that's then provided to council, like any other report that we get, like the ambulance report or the fire report. And that way council and the public knows how that money is being used.
I also think it's important to note kind of the in-kind donations, because they're not really in-kind, they are in fact indirect taxpayer dollars, in that whenever there's an event in Narberth, additional policing does not get billed to the organization. So for example, the 4th of July, the council and the borough supported the 4th of July committee in numerous ways. For example, the only organization, nonprofit organization in the borough that had borough property storage was the 4th of July committee. The Dickens Festival every year, the Bike Club every year had said, can we get that storage too? We only ever allocated that to the 4th of July in public works space. So this space kind of in-kind donations. When public works comes to clean up pre, post, overtime of policing. So for all of the events in Narberth, the taxpayer dollars and the council and the office do support that in ways other than direct funding, like this 25K to our kind of largest organization. So again, I kind of note that not for you all, but just for the public. And I think it's important to almost kind of outline that sometimes for folks as well. So that's something that you and the NBA will work on.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. Any objections to the office and the NBA doing that?
Do it.
That's a great idea.
Okay. The next point is just I thought we should revision our borough communications. We have continued with open houses, quarterly open houses. Is that something that we want to continue in the new year? Our first ill-attended event was our last open house, and then we did also realize because of the rain we were in here and the door was locked at 4, so if people came, the door was locked. So that's why we didn't get anybody from 4 to 5. But in reevaluating the communication plans, do we have any recommendations moving forward for 2022, such as the quarterly open house, money for the budget, which there's not in there to revamp the webpage, supporting for print newsletters? Is that something that we want to continue?
I love the print newsletter. I thought it was really, it's just like kind of a nice, fresh, pen and paper thing. It's fun to read and see. I don't, I guess I've participated in a couple of the open houses. Wasn't able to, unfortunately, the last one. It seems like they're worthwhile for the people who come, but I think maybe we could do a better job at having them, like sort of making sure that people know it's happening, or maybe doing them not at Borough Hall.
Yeah, like rotating
like out in the community,
or
like maybe
outside.
out, like in the, like if it's warm enough weather, doing it in Station Circle or doing it in the park, or like, well, I guess one of them was in the park, but yeah.
Yeah,
Just
2 were
looking-
in the park. Yeah, okay, so keeping them, but reimagining locations, businesses, public
Yeah.
places.
I mean, I feel our most successful one was when Samantha Bryant came and people got to meet her. So I think maybe, setting it up so that talking to council is not the only draw, that there is something else happening or some other event where people might be interested in, and then council is there as well to speak with, because
So maybe highlighting people or issues,
That's a great idea, actually, yeah.
kind of an issue-based to people-based?
People issues, or maybe a short talk, if it's an issue,
something to go along with the just having us there available to discuss. And I agree. I think that the print newsletter is a separate issue. I think it reaches people that the email newsletter does not, and I think it's a good tool. Snafu is aside from last year, so I think Samantha has talked about possibly expanding it.
Yeah, I have to talk more with Borough staff about that, about what, Missy and Michelle's capabilities to do that would be. But I know that, again, I'm sorry I use this phrase a lot. Maybe when I'm working here another year or two, I won't anymore. In my prior employment, the print newsletter was done 3 times a year. And, but again, we do it, twice a year right now. So I'll have to chat with Missy and Michelle to see if they could, if we can accommodate 3 times a year, I'd like to do that. but I just want to make sure we have the capacity to do it.
So, I tried when I first got on council, and it was a failure, to do a quarterly just council newsletter where I just asked for bullet, remember, Fred, you weren't on yet. I think it died before you got on. Where I just said for each committee, just give me bullets of things that you're talking about, upcoming topics, just so people kind of have a preview. And nobody picked it up. I mean, we didn't mail.
Wait, it was on the bulletin board.
It was on the I did put it on the bulletin board, and I think you might be the only person that said I saw it on the bulletin board. So, but I do wonder.
I thought it was nice that you had sort of a summary of what each committee was doing.
I wonder if we ask the Narber Civic Association if they want to partner with us to think about how we can do the communication plan. Maybe try, or again, that's something that the office can maybe
I can talk about it.
because, Michelle really did a fabulous job outlining that communication plan. So Samantha, I think I would be comfortable with us just saying, can Michelle revisit that, or can the office revisit that and maybe update it under the new manager leadership?
I'm trying to remember when that was.
Oh, it was a really fabulous, she did,
I saw it like a month or so ago, yeah. Yeah, I was asking, when we were collecting, starting to collect newsletter submissions, I remember asking Michelle Carroll, the Borough had one. She shared a copy of it with me. So yeah, me and Michelle can take another look at it and bring it to this committee, any suggested changes we have for it if you'd like.
Yeah, she set up, but it was kind of it was a chart with,
Yeah.
okay, the webpage, social media, ways, kind of tools that we use, communication tools in the borough,
Right.
and then different types of information, and she really kind of mapped it out as a grid.
Right, like what sort of information is appropriate,
Is appropriate for
which
where.
media type, yeah.
And
And we do have a project going right now as well where I've asked Missy to revamp the community information boards. She has designed a new background for them, which we're working on ordering. And I think kind of the philosophy is going to be the one here in 100 Conway is going to be like the master board. And basically Public Works is going to have the job of whatever is on the board here at 100 Conway is what all the boards in the borough should have on them.
Yeah.
And material would not be allowed to be posted to it from outside organizations unless it's approved by the borough and it's on that master board. Because I have noticed, it seems like, I don't know, maybe this is ignorance on my part, but it does seem like I don't know, like I believe the boxes are locked, but it seems like somehow other people's information are getting occasionally into the information boards.
that's some Narberth crime right there.
Yeah.
Boston, here.
Solving the big issues here.
Another busy town mystery.
That's right. So the instruction's going to be whatever is on the board here is what should be on the boards everywhere. And if anyone wants something on the board, they need to come talk to us. And so I've asked Missy now to start designing or deciding what things should be on the board.
And what's the frequency? Would you see that as quarterly? Is that
Yeah.
monthly? Quarterly?
Yeah, I'd say it's being like it's literally seasonal, so quarterly
Yeah.
update, yeah.
Okay. And
I suggest we refer to it as the central board, maybe. I think master is on
Yeah, that's
as a
true,
term,
yeah.
so.
Fair enough.
it's a
Good
minor
call.
or go like this.
I appreciate that distinction.
Yeah, I do. The last thing that, and I know.
Sorry, actually, I have
Sure.
one last thing on this item.
Yeah.
So I've also have asked the staff to submit the Borough newsletter, website, and social media and the Pennsylvania State Association of Boroughs annual communication contest. And I found that valuable in the sense that I like to see who the winners are every year and see like what they're doing with their stuff. And I don't know, I just find it kind of a useful like benchmarking sort of tool as to what we're doing compared to other boroughs in the state.
That's great. So we had talked about the webpage and just kind of outsourcing that, which did not make the budget this
Right.
year. Is that something that, do you think there are funds to do that? That's still a priority?
I don't think that's a priority at the moment. I mean, if this committee or council decides it's a priority, of course it will become one. But from my perspective, I right now think there bigger fish to fry for the borough.
You know what, I like this webpage personally, so I don't, but I mean, I'm not gonna stand in your way if you want to change it, but I think let's not spend the money in the near future. It really works well. It's the first time we've had one that works.
You know, I do agree that it works, and this is funny, this is form over function. I think Ron Swanson would love this webpage.
Maybe that's what I like about it. I like that sort of public works feel.
I mean, it is bureaucratic, it is government.
Yeah, it's got good government. It has that good government feel.
I absolutely agree with you, absolutely. I just think, gosh, I'm not sure it totally reflects Narberth, that if you were thinking, oh, I'm moving back to the East Coast, I want to move to Narberth, let me Google it. There's not even a picture of our town, our community, so maybe
We get enough good press elsewhere.
Some
mean,
pictures
really
would be
do.
nice.
Yeah.
I agree
A picture?
there. Some
A dog?
pictures would
I
be
have
nice.
talked to Missy about that idea, yeah.
So let's
The
just, let's
tunnel.
keep it a small
The
request.
old website had pictures, lots of pictures. The tunnel, it had trees, it had tights, and it had, you know,
yeah, okay. Well, you know what, let's let the
a
office
lot of
handle that.
flags.
I mean, if it makes you feel any better, you know, I did have the #1 website in the state
You did,
for 4 years running.
you did, we pulled it up and looked, we're like,
You won that prize?
drooling.
You won a
Yeah.
prize? That's interesting.
Well,
Yeah,
then
we
we'll
want-
just get
we
out
want
of your.
that, don't we?
Yeah, me
We
too.
want
I have pictures.
Let's start with pictures. I mean, I think the functionality is there. I mean, I hear occasionally from people who say that it's a bit difficult to navigate, but I don't know what the specific area that people are having trouble with is. And I, you know, I obviously don't have any, but that's the problem. We're all so involved that we, you know, we know our way around it.
Yeah.
So,
But I also think, again, not being a media analyst here, but the more that social media from the Narberth Borough is being used to Facebook and then directing people back to the web page, I think people will become more familiar, because I do think any web page there's a learning curve. So as long as we're just continuing to point people to original information and documents, the more the community will get used to it.
Yeah, and I definitely have given some guidance to Missy on some beefing up our social media posts and that sort of thing. Like, you know, making sure not just like announcing things like, oh, the office will be closed, but like maybe throwing on like for election day, being like the office will be closed and like here's where the polling places in Narberth are, that sort of thing. Or, you know, maybe I'm just spitballing. I haven't talked about this idea with her yet. I'm thinking while I'm talking. It's like, you know, Friday is, you know, Hingham Sandwich, right? Bulk item pickup day. And here's a link to like the trash guidelines on the borough website or that
Right.
sort of thing. So, yeah, so I think that's going to get better. And one of the other ideas I'd love to do is there's a software, well, not even software, there's web services out there that allow you to simultaneously post content to multiple sources at once. So I have it set up before where I could make a post on Facebook and it would automatically post to Twitter and to a WordPress website. So I would love for the you know, Borough to be able to do that sort of thing as well with all the different social media tools that people use nowadays.
Yeah, and even, I mean, I wonder if Lower Merion has that tool, because you see, I mean, their planning commission is separately post, their police department is really active in posting. You know, I see you
So
smile.
that's, sorry,
Go
I
ahead.
have like no like, it's very, especially because you sit across from me, it's like, you never have to know how I feel about a particular issue.
Double, you
Yeah.
know, with the mask on. Yeah,
So, you know, that's one of those subjects that's always been a little bit tricky for me, is how centralized versus decentralized your social media should be. And I finally, you know, got convinced to let go a little bit of it. So in my last job, there was the Borough page, and then like the farmers market had their own page that that the Borough was an admin on, but volunteers did the posting for it. And then the Nature Preserve had its own Instagram page, where again, it was set up where the Borough office had administrator rights, but volunteers ultimately did all the posting. So I would say, and that all worked out fine. So I would say, if we wanted to ever do a more decentralized thing, or if we felt that certain parts of the Borough had the capability and interest of doing additional posts to their own thing, I would be open to opening that up, but only in the right circumstances.
See, that's interesting because I actually think I align with your original view. I am very cautious of folks who are posting on behalf of the borough. Because even if you have administrative rights and you can take something down, once it's out there, it's out there. If it's incorrect, if they're speaking ill information, if that is the route in developing a communication plan we go, I think that the solicitor should review
Absolutely.
any of that because that makes me nervous.
Well, as you saw from my initial reaction, it's not my preferred way of doing it. Just if this body or council would want to go in that direction, there is a way of doing it. But I would admit, yeah, that my gut reaction is to keep it centralized as possible.
I agree, but I would leave that up to you, to the office. Bob, Fred, any thoughts or comments on that?
No, not really.
Okay, then moving on, if we don't have anything, we'll just, I guess, wait to hear how we can support the office in community and outreach. Action items, you'll go over all of these at the meeting, but is there anything in particular that you want to talk about prior to our full council?
Yeah, actually there are two things. One is the schedule of bills. So looking at our audit findings from 2019, one of the items I noticed was our auditor requested that that council not just approve the schedule of bills, but the total amount of all the bills. So starting actually last month and going forward from now on, you'll notice on the council agenda, the actual total of the bills is now listed. And then the other thing I wanted to, there are actually two items on here that council is not talking about tonight, but I expect council to talk about in December that I just want to touch briefly on.
Sure.
One is the proposed fee schedule update. So it's my general goal to update the fee schedule on an annual basis that helps avoid confusion during the audit and for residents and all that. Myself and our code enforcement zoning officer and Michelle Carroll, the assistant to the manager, looked at the borough's fee schedule, compared it to the fee schedule of other municipalities, and as well, most importantly, had a real honest conversation with ourselves about how much does it cost the borough to provide the service? Because fees, so, any good solicitor, I'm sure John Walco would tell you if you asked him, fees, municipalities can't make profit off of fees. However, fees are allowed to cover not just the direct costs. So, for example, when we issue a building permit, there's an hourly rate we pay to Yerkes for reviewing the permit and doing the inspections related to it. But there's also an overhead cost to the borough, the fact that we have this building and, Yerkes has office hours here, and Missy and Michelle answer questions, even me answer questions sometimes about building permits or the status of them or all that. So there's certain overhead costs as well we are allowed to factor in. So talking with Kevin and Michelle, we changed the structure of some of the fees, most notably the building permits. Previously, a lot of those were based on a percentage of the project cost. And there was a concern from myself and Kevin and Michelle. We don't have any specific examples, but it's a general concern that contractors know that fact and they might be making their project costs go accordingly, knowing that their permit fee is going to be based on that. So we just felt that moving to a flat rate, a very easily validated fee structure, so a plumbing permit would be based on the number of fixtures, for example. There's no real way of making that number up or anything. Or square footage for a building permit would be a more honest way of doing it, and more consistent way of doing it. Some fees are going to probably go down actually as a result of it. However, and honestly, some fees are going to go up. However, the most important thing in the process was, again, that do our fees match our costs? And we use other municipalities more as a, I guess for lack of a better term, a sanity check to make sure we weren't too out of line with what our costs were for those services. And I feel pretty good that this is going to be something that will work out better for the borough as well as for contractors and residents. And there's that we actually added because we've been providing these services without charging any fees. For example, you know, like if someone calls, so Kevin is our, for the public's benefit, is our code and zoning and building officer. There are plenty of times where people call Kevin, if they call for a really basic question like, what's the setback for a shed? Obviously, I mean, I don't think the borough needs to charge someone for that. But there are times where someone will come by the borough during Kevin's office hours and will say, hey, if I'm thinking of doing some major project on a property or something that might even require land development, am I allowed to do this or not? Well, that's a good like 30-minute, hour to an hour-long conversation Kevin has to have with that person. And I don't think that's necessarily fair that the borough is subsidizing those sort of conversations. So this zoning consultation fee that was added, you know, is intended to recoup, you know, those sort of costs.
What's the cost on that? And this isn't, I have to say, my neighbor John is going to be so happy because 10 years ago he said, I don't understand why there's not a flat fee. You pay more if you choose a fancier tile, essentially. So what would a zoning, I mean, did you talk about that, a zoning consultation fee?
Yeah, so on the fee schedule that was provided here, so about midway through it, zoning development consultation with BCO is $100 per hour with a 1 hour minimum. And again, $100 per hour is not what Kevin makes, nor is that what Europeach charges us, but just to be transparent, again, that covers not just what Europeach charges us, but all the other overhead that goes into that.
Can we talk about that one for a minute? Just like to talk about that one for a minute.
Sure.
Just in thinking through, thinking out loud about it, the implications of that. I think that I was around when, that's a service that was always provided informally when the borough had its own building inspector, like in the office. So the person was around, and then Mr. Capaferri was an engineer. He would, he would talk to whoever was around. He was paid a salary. Later, there was a decision made to provide that kind of meeting time as a kind of a complementary service because it encouraged compliance with the zoning permitting process, and it was kind of heading off issues like permitting, both zoning and permitting issues that would arise when that wasn't so openly available. So I think we want to think about that, the value of that, before we begin to charge a fee that might deter people who might otherwise kind of be enrolled in a much more productive relationship with the borough if you say, come on down and talk to the building inspector. So I'd just like us to discuss that and look at it.
Yeah, I appreciate that historical point there. Yeah, that's true. I mean, in fairness, something I did used to do before when dealing with developers in my old job, basically it was your first meeting with the borough was free if you had an idea and wanted to talk to the engineer and solicitor and me and the zoning officer. Then if you want to do anything beyond that, you need to put down land development escrow and all that kind of thing. And I don't know, maybe that's a similar concept here. I'm trying to think.
Maybe the borough could offer a freebie, like a half-hour freebie consultation or something.
And anything after that.
If they really need more time, like then, because that's an opportunity to answer some quick questions, just for someone to understand what the process is. A lot of maybe a new person in town wants to realizes that they're actually going to be changing the front facade of their historic home, and they need some explanation of how that process works and what the review is. I think it's good for the borough to provide some basic time with the inspector. But
yeah, I think there's a lot of value to that.
Yeah, so I do have some concerns about the change in the building permit in particular, because it seems to me that it's a substantial financial difference from what we're doing now. So I guess I'd just like a little more scrutiny on that, like maybe comparing how the last 20 building permits would look if we use the new system versus the old system. I mean, building permits are a significant line item. The time for the inspectors is a significant expense for the borough. I think that one item is worth looking at just because it's the borough spends a lot of money doing it and charges a fair amount to cover that. So we want to make sure we get that one right.
One way to,
If I may first, sorry.
Sure.
So again, I guess my goal isn't what the fee problem before necessarily, how do I put this? I don't know how the borough calculated the fees before, but talking with Kevin and Michelle, it did seem like maybe the borough was overcharging on some of its fees.
Absolutely.
So to compare the fee now to what the fee was, now what I could do, what might be more useful is look at the bills from Europees and see how much the borough paid Europees for like our last 20 building permits.
That's a great idea. Make sure that would be
And then
covered.
how this fee would compare to that.
I think that's probably the best way to go about it. That sounds great.
I'm sorry, Vice.
And well, one possibility would be to say, like, provide the consultation for, say, a very limited period of time, for no cost, like, say, from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. on Tuesdays, for example. And then you can figure out how much would that cost to the borough over 48 weeks of the year, and then actually allocate that cost, distribute it in some way equally among, say, in some way into the estimate of the cost of the permit. I don't know how the office figured the value, but you know that the permits are based now on at least the construction permits are based on the estimated gross.
Yeah, they're based on the estimated construction
cost, which in my experience, sort of looking at what people do and what people apply the permits for, it's like there's not a lot of reality there. Not saying people are not telling the truth, but maybe they've underestimated initially when they applied for their permits.
Just to recap here, so I like the suggestion of comparing. That's a great idea. Or do we agree the first 30-minute consultation perhaps is at no cost? Any additional counseling would go into that fee structure. But I guess I would have a question for Kevin and Michelle and even Missy, that is there a general set of questions that routinely get answered? And could we do what actually the She Tree just did, Bob? I got this little form that said, okay, you signed up, great, watch this 7-minute video that's put out from the PHS on how to plant a tree. And you watch it, and then you go and you're ready. Is it worth, could we consider, and I think I have a NARB neighbor who would partner with us, creating a video. So you want to make an adjustment to your house. Is there a set of content that Kevin or you or someone could do that could save perhaps 15 minutes of routine questions?
Forgive I apologize, this comes off as too cynical. So before I've done like an FAQ for that sort of thing, and I found that before and after still about the same volume of questions. Now I would say that at least in that case I could then say, well, I'll answer this question for you, but if you also go to this page on the Borough website, then this is where the information is. And I tried not to be like too, guilt trippy with people about it, because they didn't know any better. So I would say this, I'm willing to do it, and I'm willing to put it on the Borough website, and if it works, great. It's not that big of an investment to do it, and then once it's there, it's there. If we made some major change, we'd have to update it. So yes, there are very common questions that we get asked, and it could be worthwhile to either do a video and or a written FAQ on the Borough website, yeah. So yeah, I'd be very interested in doing that.
Any other comments or thoughts? Can I skip back the bank account changes? I know this was in the works. Is that just been finalized?
So yeah, council just actually has to vote on any time we open or close bank accounts. Basically what that is, as we talked about with the budget work session,
Right.
so consolidating and getting a better interest rate.
Okay.
And not much better, we're getting 1 basis point better, but it's still technically better.
Okay. Debt proposal?
Sure. So again, that's following up on the conversations we've had in the past about both refinancing the borough's existing debt as well as taking out $1 million in new debt for facility improvements and repair, well, more like repairs to 100 Conway and 80 Windsor. PFM, Public Financial Management, the consultant we've been talking to, took another look at some of their numbers and added some additional information to the presentation from what they gave us before. Most notably, after page 6, they provided the backup schedules for what all the new and sample amortization schedules for what the new debt would probably look like, as well as total principal and interest and that sort of thing. So I'm happy to do my best to channel PFM and answer any questions as best I can.
I've gone back and forth with PFM on some details, but I think it's important for us to move on this because I'm not confident that the low interest rates will last. So I think at this point, we should move forward with this. My concerns are minor, and I think moving expeditiously is more important than.
Okay. Bob, anything?
Yeah, jump on it, get the loan.
Yep, I'm with you. Okay, any cleaner proposal?
Yeah, so again, my thanks to Michelle Carroll for doing some research on this. From residents as well as the Borough Public Works staff, we've gotten some complaints about the quality of the services we're receiving from our cleaner who does the field house as well as 80 Windsor. And so Michelle and I tried to offer some guidance to our cleaner as to the level of service we wanted, especially given the contract we had with that cleaner. We also, one of the bonuses of doing the fob system over 80 Windsor is we could actually see when the cleaner was swiping in to do the work and all that. So, based on how things have continued to go, we thought it made sense to still find a different cleaner. So Michelle got a few different proposals. The lowest price one is from Top Choice Cleaning, which is in your packet. And they're almost half of what we're paying our cleaner right now. I think we're paying $1,600 between both buildings right now, and we would per month, and we would pay Top Choice $900 per month, and let's see, $930 per month. And the only thing I do want to make sure we know, so I asked Michelle to check, check references for Top Choice. It was brought to our attention that this is someone whose family owns a separate cleaning company and has now kind of grown up and has started their own. So that the borough would be their second client. However, I think given this person is new and this person presented himself very professionally as part of the, for lack of a better term, interview process and proposal process compared to the other cleaners, I think this is someone who is competent and someone who is eager to prove himself. And I think even if that isn't the case, this contract does, it's a year-long contract, but it does have a 30-day opt-out. So if the service did turn out to be bad, it wouldn't be, I want to put this nicely, but it wouldn't be any worse probably than our situation right now. And we would have the 30-day opt-out if we needed to invoke that.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Great work.
Well, what are we paying on an hourly rate here for this? Have any idea? When the price goes down that far, I'm worried that we're not, we're paying like $10 an hour or something.
We were not being charged fairly.
No, I think
That
we were radically
likely.
overpaying.
That seems likely, yeah. But
Yeah, because even the other quotes that I think she got, I have to check how much they were. This was definitely the lowest one, but I also think the other ones she found were either in line, I think we're a little bit less than what we're paying right now. So
I mean, also
And-
the performance, like I totally appreciate your question because
Yeah.
you want them to be able to perform, but it's not like a long-term contract with some kind of like result we'll know the results like from day to day. It's not like a construction project where they give you under like a very low bid and you don't know if they're able to deliver until you're like 6 weeks in or something. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Oh, I interpreted your question
I'm not
as
as
being
concerned about
equitable.
quality, I'm concerned about equity.
Equity, yeah, that's how I interpreted it too.
oh,
Like, we want to make sure we're paying a livable wage.
We could find a
Ideally.
union contractor.
Yeah,
I
are we
don't know.
paying
Do we want to go
$15
there?
an hour?
Yeah.
Well, that's what you're talking about. I mean, if you want.
Yeah, that's maybe,
Yeah. I appreciate this, and I think that the dynamic is probably that we were radically overpaying for underperformance, and that we just recalibrated here. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. With that, if there's no more questions, any public comment?
Well, as long as you're bringing that topic and it's fresh, one of the challenges
And
we've had,
you're still public there, Mr. Winston.
but one of the.
Sorry,
So-
can you please identify yourself?
Identify yourself.
Sorry, R. Winston, 317 Mariana Avenue. One of the problems that I've had professionally when dealing with a small company, and I suspect this is a small company, is like when they're one cleaner or they're two cleaners, like leave or are not available, that you don't have the depth, and then the service falls apart. But like Samantha said, we'll try it, but I'm just saying that that's one of the reasons why sometimes these small companies,
Yeah.
aren't the best, because they can't like say, okay, well, that guy's no good, we'll bring in the other guy, but there is no other guy.
Jim?
good. Anybody online?
We do have Barbara Horner online.
Barbara, are you?
I don't have anything to say. I just wasn't able to come down to to Borough Hall right now.
Thank you. Okay, with that then, let's close F&A with a half an hour to spare. Thanks all.
Well done. Really, and you shortened that up.
Did I?
Yeah, we didn't run.
Oh, shoot, I do have
we
one
didn't run
thing.
into a council
Shoot, I
meeting.
take back my shutdown. I theoretically,
Yeah.
I'm going to be traveling for our next F&A meeting.
Oh.
I will be in Amsterdam and I cannot call in because of the time difference. Do we want to cancel or do you want to have it without me?
We're probably gonna
Why would
budget
it
stuff,
be, is there something pressing that we
I
need
don't
to meet
think
about?
so. I mean, we're going to be doing the budget.
One item that I would see of note is the fee schedule. So it's obviously it's up to you all if you want to just have that go straight to full council or if you want F&A to tackle it in December.
Let's talk about it. We can make that decision closer to the date, it looks like.
Okay, I just don't want to have to pay for, I guess we won't have to pay for advertising.
Well, to cancel a meeting, there's no advertising fee.
Okay.
But to reschedule a meeting,
Right,
yes, there is.
okay,
Let's do Aaron, if Aaron thinks
okay.
it needs to happen.
Okay,
I
okay.
defer to you, that and that, because you would be the chair.
All right. Yeah,
You're the associate chair, so you.
Okay.
yeah, so you can make
We'll
that
talk it
decision.
over.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Now-
Done, adjourned.